What are we gonna do when we get back?
What are we gonna do when we get back?
I take a shower and hit the rack.
Take a shower and hit the rack.
Welcome to Charlie Mike. If you're a combat veteran with an entrepreneurial bug and want to know what highly successful combat veteranpreneurs are doing to transform their sacrifice and experience to create their visual reality, then this is dedicated to your inspiring and fulfilling future. And now your host, Dwayne Perrell.
No way, gotta run, feet, lots of fun.
Invest in Yourself ebook is my free gift to you for listening to the show and becoming part of the CO Nation. To receive your free gift, please go to landmarklifecoaching.com. Thank you for joining us on this episode. There are so many veterans with the core strengths to become successful entrepreneurs and continue to make a huge positive impact on our country. Here we highlight the amazing successes of combat veteranpreneurs. Combat veterans for the purpose of this show are soldiers, sailors, Marines, and airmen who have served the United States in wars, campaigns, and in theater on foreign soil or hostile waters. Our guest today is Timothy Lawson. Tim has been a member of the Veterans Administration's digital media engagement team since April of 2016. His scope includes blogging, video production, and launching the Veterans Administration's first ever podcast. Before joining the Veterans Administration, he was best known for podcasts such as One Too Many, Veteran Suicide, Fuel for Warriors, and Veteran Empire, which was nominated for a 2013 Podcast Award. He graduated from American University School of Communications in 2016 with a degree in broadcast journalism. Tim is a Marine Corps veteran, having served as a Marine security guard and was posted at embassies in Algiers, Algeria, Moscow, Russia, Lima, and Peru. All right, Tim, welcome to the show and thank you for being a guest.
Thank you for having me. It's always nice to be on this side of the microphone.
Yeah, exactly. As a host, sometimes it's nice just to be on the other side. So I'm excited to have you tell our loyal listeners all about your journey from a combat veteran to a successful entrepreneur. So before we get into your entrepreneurial experience, can you please give our audience an overview of your military experience?
So I joined the Marine Corps in 2006 after working for a small family-owned greenhouse where I worked shortly after I graduated high school. I realized I wasn't really going to go anywhere. There was a ceiling at that business, since it was a family-run business, and I needed a career. So I joined the Marine Corps. I enlisted as a 6672 aviation supply. I went to MCAS New River, where I was with Mouse 26, and I ordered airplane parts for like 18 months. It was not very cool or really all that exciting, but it was an interesting experience. Anybody that's been at New River or Lejeune will say that Jacksonville will quickly steal your soul and make you bring a lot of drinking, a lot of partying, a lot of just things you do when there's really nothing to do in the area. I knew I wanted to be a Marine security guard since I got out of boot camp. So the entire time I was at New River, I was constantly looking at what I had to do when I could officially turn in my package. They told me that we were possibly going to go to Iraq, and that a squadron was going to go to Iraq, and I volunteered to go with them. They said, nope, we're taking Mouse 29 Marines, not Mouse 26 Marines. And I was like, great, I'm putting in my MSG package. And so I became a Marine security guard. I was posted in Algeria, Russia, and Peru, and I guarded embassies for 3 years. And at the end of that tour, I decided I had enough and did not want to go back to ordering airplane parts. So I decided to separate from the Marine Corps.
All right, great. That must have been an interesting military career to be a guard at the embassies in all those different environments.
Yeah, so it was actually a really cool progression of assignments, right? So Algiers is really interesting because it is this Northern Africa Muslim country, and it was the first time I'd ever been anywhere overseas, right? Like crossing the border into Canada is the most international experience I'd had before this. And so it was, getting thrusted right into a whole new environment, being put in a country full of culture that I was bred to fear, right? From what was going on in politics and in military and our campaigns and stuff. And quickly, letting a lot of my assumptions and a lot of the stigmas that were attached to that dissipate as I became a part of the culture, and I learned a lot about the community. I made a lot of friends in the community, while still recognizing that there was a physical threat there, right? AQIM, which was Al Qaeda's sister, like little sister almost, was in the area, and we were aware of that. And so, we trained a lot for a physical threat in Algeria. Fortunate that nothing ever really came to be. Went on to Moscow, Russia, where it was all counter intel, right? There was no physical threat. We weren't worried about the Russians bombing us or anything, right? But it was all counter intel. And so a whole different, it was just as serious, if not more so, but in a whole different approach, right? We're looking at, access, information security, stuff like that. And where like every day, every decision, is you can connect that with the greater mission of protecting the embassy and the information inside it. And so then after 2 years of this intense physical threat in Algiers and that environment, and then going on to Russia, where it was the more mental information threat there. I was ready to have something a little more simple, and I got it with Lima, Peru. And I spent most of my time there hanging out at the local casino, playing poker with the Peruvians. I did some surfing, all the while pushing buttons and letting diplomats into the. Because in Lima, we were like worried about like an earthquake, right? That was like that was our biggest threat there, was earthquake or fire, or like a drunken Peruvian accidentally getting on the ground. So, right. So it was a nice little glory post, if you will. That was my 3 years overseas, and in the bulk of my Marine Corps career.
Yeah, there's a lot of synergies that come from those experiences over there to things that you would, take into being an entrepreneur. And, some of the things that stood out when you were talking through it is, the different demands that you were under depending on the environment, whether it was physical or mental. And, as an entrepreneur, you work a lot of long hours. You have a lot of mental stress from trying to figure out, positioning your company for that next growth stage. And, with that comes a lot of preconceived ideas that you thought when you started your business or your venture that, would happen and may not happen. And then, the risks that you talked about, that there's different risks, right? So you, as an entrepreneur, you need to be able to be aware that there's all these different risks, and how do you manage that? And so this is one of the one of the reasons I do this podcast, is because as somebody's talking through their military experience, it may not even be as apparent to them all these experiences that they know that they've had and have prepared them for other things in life, such as becoming an entrepreneur. It just really jumps out, the parallels that are there, because you wouldn't get that experience any other way. So so that's great. So can you tell our listeners about your entrepreneurial experience itself, how you kind of got into become an entrepreneur, and what that's consisted of?
Yeah, so, like most people, never thought I'd be an entrepreneur, right? Never thought I didn't know what an entrepreneur was around the time that I was like thinking about doing it. And essentially what happened is I got out of the Marine Corps. I spent a year in Sacramento using the GI Bill to take online classes. Moved out to DC to start taking classes at American University. I enrolled at AU as a psychology major, and after a semester, I realized, psychology is fascinating, but I don't want a job in psychology. And I had this epiphany right after I recorded one of the Veteran Empire podcasts, and I was like, you know what, this is what I need to be doing. So I took a semester off because the Yellow Ribbon program that AU provides, I didn't enroll soon enough to get provided that. So I wasn't going to get full funding for the full year, and I didn't want to take out loans right away. So I took a semester off to switch degrees over to broadcast journalism to really hammer down on podcasting. And I started doing digital media and just a lot of digital support for a local realtor. And so to support the hobby of podcasting and to give it an opportunity to grow and monetize, along with some of this W-9 work that I was doing for this realtor, I started Lawson Entertainment LLC. And it was really, I didn't know what I was really trying to do with it at first. I went on LegalZoom, I put all the paperwork in, I got an LLC, and then I was like, great, now how do I make money? So Lawson Entertainment itself, really what it started out as is I was doing this digital support for this realtor that was pumping money into the LLC's bank account, and I was using that money to then create more products for myself, right? So the Veteran Empire podcast, at the time I had a podcast called The Bromantic Comedy, what I did with one of my friends. I had just finished a podcast, I think. And so, and as you know, that takes money. Like a lot of people think that, you just go on SoundCloud and you hit publish. But if you want to, take podcasting seriously, you invest in the right software, you invest in the right hosting, and, Libsyn, most people pay $20 a month to host a podcast. And, if you're not making any money, that's, over $100 a year of, your own money you got to pump into. You want to buy yourself a nice microphone. You want to buy yourself nice headphones. You want to invest in scheduling software and all this sort of stuff to make all the processes. And after a while, you start looking into upwards of $50 a month just to podcast because you want to take it seriously. And so, at the beginning of what that was, and for a long time, it was Lawson Entertainment just became this LLC that took in everything that I did professionally, whether it was contracting or for that realtor. When I started the One Too Many Veteran Suicide podcast, I got a lot of speaking opportunities, and those came with like honorariums and stuff like that. So I let the LLC absorb that money. And it became a way to make all my podcasting stuff a business expense. And because I was doing just enough with contracting and speaking and with a Kickstarter that I did and all that sort of stuff, I was taking enough money that my business expenses were warranted and legal, right? So what a lot of people think, I want to have an LLC so I can just write off my no, you need to have an income. Like the IRS requires you to make some money for you to sustain that business. And so I had enough of that to keep it alive. And essentially what it really ended up becoming was a way to fund this hobby that I knew that I was good at, that I knew I wanted to do, that I wanted to grow somehow. And you mentioned in my bio that I now work for the Department of Veterans Affairs, and I do their podcast and I help with their video media. I am an employee for them, not a contractor. I am an employee there. But the stuff, when I graduated from college and I got offered the job, they didn't care that I graduated from American University. They cared that they had seen hundreds of podcast episodes under my belt, videos that I'd done, speaking engagements, and all this stuff that I was able to do because I was able to get I was able to create this super micro business around this stuff, just enough to fund it to happen. You know what I mean? Like I didn't leverage it for, and I know I'm going on a huge tangent here, but good. I didn't leverage it. I didn't try selling it. I didn't try upselling. If I could find an income, if I could find some money, if someone was willing to pay me $50 to, drive an hour and go do a 30-minute speaking event, then that's what I did. If people couldn't afford to pay me, I asked them to put a jar on the table and take donations, whatever I could get to get cash coming into that account to allow me to continue doing what I did. And ultimately, it led to this. It led to me getting a great job at the Department of Veterans Affairs, and Lawson Entertainment still exists. It took a small hiatus so I could, get stabilized in my business. But I think it's perfect timing that I'm on this podcast. I'm now looking at new ways to get cash inflow and take it into a different direction.
Yeah, no, that's all good information because, people need to realize that it's not always just a straight arrow road that you're following, and it's not as obvious how you can build and sustain the business so that, like you say, it's legitimate, and you're not just trying to create a tax shelter for something, and those things do get looked at. So yeah, and one of the initial things you were saying was, when you started Lawson Entertainment, you weren't exactly sure, what the direction was and what the full mission, vision kind of thing was, but you kind of you build it over time, and I can relate to that with my coaching practice that I started. I knew I wanted to get into coaching, but I wasn't sure what I really wanted to specialize in, and so it ended up going towards supporting veterans in transition. But initially I was thinking, well, maybe I'll do leadership because that's what I do I've done in my career as an executive. I have a lot of leadership experience, a lot of great accolades for it, and it would be, a natural progression. But then, I really wanted something that was driven more by passion, and so that's how I ended up evolving into supporting veterans in transition. And so, but I couldn't have written that in a plan when I started. Typically, the things that I had in mind when I launched the business, a year later, I'm on another path, and it's good. It's not like it was bad that the connections and the networking and the marketing just led a little different direction than I anticipated, and I was actually happy with the direction it was going. So, you don't want to get too tied to any particular path, because then you will follow something that may not lead anywhere. You got to be more flexible and adaptable over time.
Yeah. And one thing that's really, really convenient and actually a lot of fun about being a single member LLC that has a lifestyle business, right? Like what I have is considered a lifestyle business.
Yep.
And what's amazing about it is I can just decide I want to try something, and Lawson Entertainment can fund that effort with at least the intention of monetizing that effort should I succeed in it, right? So one of the most recent endeavors that I've taken is in the 2016 season, I covered the local National Women's Soccer League team, the Washington Spirit, and I covered them through digital media for underneath what we call Follow Your Spirit is the name of the site and the effort, but it falls under Lawson Entertainment. And I did not know how I could monetize it, right? I was like, I want to try sports journalism. Women's soccer had a low enough barrier to entry where I could get in, but popular enough where I knew I could grow it. And I gave it a shot, and sure enough, I didn't make any money. Probably about 50 cents on YouTube advertisements for the videos that I created, but with that year experience, I noticed that there was a huge gap in merchandise. So we've started creating. I'm wearing one right now, a shirt that is based on a player, and we have a couple more that are going to come out. And there is a huge demand for videos featuring these women, and so there's an opportunity there to make feature videos, and maybe make $20-$30 off of advertising for each one of them. It's not a lot, but it could at least compensate me for my time for a hobby that I enjoy. And those things, and that's one. And going back to the convenience of being a lifestyle business, I don't need a bunch of employees that I need to make sure can have an invested interest in this. I don't need to make sure that my investors agree with the direction I'm taking. All I need to do is tell my fiance, hey, I'm going to do this, and have her be like, yeah, that's a good idea. And be like, all right, well, I'm going to do it. And, she's the only nod I really need to get to do anything that requires spending money. And I didn't go into it knowing that there was going to be a way to monetize it, but because I gave that shot, I let Lawson Entertainment fund that effort. It could turn around at 2017, starts becoming profitable just for this one endeavor.
Yeah, no, that's a great point too, because sometimes you got to take that chance and go out there on a limb as an entrepreneur. You kind of got a gut feeling, there's something here. Don't know exactly what it is or how I'm going to monetize it, but I know I can, and I'll figure it out as I go along. And that's the excitement of entrepreneurship too. It's not sitting in a corporate environment where somebody's saying, okay, well, we had a group of people that decided this is what we're doing and this is how we're doing it, so go do it. So it really keeps people more engaged and more interested in what they're doing than being in a typical company environment.
Yeah, and having this, I really enjoy. Look, if the federal government decided to kick me to the curb, I feel like I have enough experience, not only in the current business that I have, but just in business and in life in general, that I could pinpoint a gap in my community, start a business, and in 6 months possibly get revenue coming in, right? Mm-hmm. And at the very least, I'm confident that should I need to transition careers and if that doesn't happen back to back, that I could quickly leverage some aspect of my current business to at least keep me afloat, or at least soften the bleed of not having an income enough time to bridge that gap. And I really enjoy this combination of having the full-time job that comes with the benefits that you need, the retirement and all that sort of stuff, but having this side hustle that either can make you a few extra bucks, it can get you some more extra opportunities. I would never, having this business and creating that outlet for or that platform for the women's soccer thing, that got me media credentials to the National Women's Soccer League finals last year, because the team I covered made it, right? And that's an opportunity that I wouldn't have gotten if I hadn't taken this, if I wouldn't have included that sort of in the well, I mean, I guess you can, but it's supported then under the LLC, and it's funded by that. And so it's a low risk, high reward situation for me, because if I go 3 months, without, right now I do a podcast called Fuel for Warriors, and a veteran owned company called Alpha Coffee is the production partner on that. And they were originally Lock and Load Java, and they were going through a rebranding over to Alpha Coffee. And so I stopped doing the podcast to let them make that transition. And we're about to start it up again. But because we stopped the podcast, it's not like losing that sponsorship money or that production money. It's not like, I had to slow down some things that I was doing with the business, but like I'm still eating and loving life, right? So like, right. I didn't have to I didn't panic on well, who else can I get to cover? What can I do now to cover that cost? I gotta, I don't get to buy the drone that I want to buy. I gotta be careful on spending, swiping the business credit card. But it's more leisurely. It's still a business. I still take it serious. I still, business is business, personal is personal. But it's nice when they can sort of sit right next to each other, nice and cozy like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. All right, listeners, we're going to go ahead and take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back. Landmark Life Coaching's vision is to be the nation's premier coaching partner for inspiring and empowering those in transition. They partner with courageous groundbreakers and transitioning veterans to create fulfilling and empowering futures that they desire. They have partnered with various entrepreneurs and transitioning veterans to leverage their core strengths and implement the framework for the future they always dreamed of. Could you or anyone you know benefit from a success partner to bring clarity to your future or their future? If so, please check out landmarklifecoaching.com for more information and charliemikepodcast.com for the Charlie Mike Podcast, showcasing the successes of combat veteranpreneurs. Okay, we are back with Tim Lawson talking about his amazing entrepreneurial path that he's been on and the way he's been able to work a full-time job and leverage doing something he really is passionate about with building various podcasts and supporting different media outlets. And so, Tim, as we're back, I'd like to go into what I call our In the Zone segment. And this is where, we all love when we hit that sweet spot or get that feeling that we are doing what we are meant to do or where we're meant to be. So let me ask you, what was that point where you knew doing entrepreneurial work was meant for you?
Man, that's a great question. So I knew that I was headed in the right direction when I'd had that aha moment of you know what, I like podcasting. I should start moving my professional life in this direction. And starting the LLC, sort of unsure where I was going to go, but knew that I wanted to be involved in entertainment or media or, serious entrepreneurs are probably listening to this shaking their head man, this guy had no direction, just signing up his LLC and going. it was a struggle for a while. You don't know how to do tax stuff. I'm still now I'm unsure if I'm even doing tax stuff correctly. I don't even know if that ever goes away, because I talk to people that have $1 million businesses, and they're like, yeah, we're just getting it right now. So like I'm like, well, I'm glad the IRS is more concerned about you than me.
Right.
I think it was when I started the One Too Many Veteran Suicide podcast, because when I started Lawson Entertainment, I was already doing a podcast called Veteran Empire, and that was a podcast for a business called Veteran Empire. They were a lifestyle veterans brand. They're not around any longer, but for the few years that they're around, they sold T-shirts, and they did it's like, I guess apparel was more of what they did. But I was like, you guys should have a podcast. I started doing one for them. So that was already existence. Started the LLC, moving things along. One Too Many Veteran Suicide. I got inspired I wanted to contribute to the veteran suicide space. Like, I wanted to contribute to that conversation. And I'm a podcaster, so that's obviously what I'm going to do. And I had to create a product, and I had to design it, and I had to sell it, because I started a Kickstarter. Developing and successfully executing a Kickstarter is a great 30-day course in entrepreneurship, because you have to create a product, you have to explain it, you have to sell it, you have to then manage the money that you get for it, you have to allocate resources. It is a great exercise in what it means to conduct some sort of business. And so developing that Kickstarter, selling it, and then once I got the money, allocating the resources to make sure that I was producing the right product, delivering my product, then leveraging my product for other opportunities, which is how I got I did speaking gigs, and I did I did other like media things with people, and that whole experience. And I haven't, I keep on saying I'm going to get back to doing that podcast, and I haven't done it in a while, but mostly because I think I've said my piece, and I think it can end there. But I think that's when I was in the zone. That's when I was booking people the perfect way. Like, I had a process for everything. I was in the zone like this. I don't really think I realized that until you asked me that question, and I had to think about when that was. But
yeah,
because in the moment you feel like everything's chaos, right?
Right.
Like nothing's going the right way. I'm not making as much money as I should. This product isn't as good as it should be. Your worst critic, right? And so, but now looking back on it, that year and a half, where the product that I was most well known for was the Veteran Suicide podcast. I mean, that's when I was in the zone. I was putting out upwards of 3 podcasts a week on that one subject.
Oh wow! Yeah.
It was weekly interviews, and then I would provide my own thoughts, and then occasionally did Q&As and stuff like that. Speaking engagements from coast to coast, and I was in the zone. I was on top of my topic, and I was really good at it. And I would argue that most people don't know who I am or what I did. Most people are probably, but I would say that I was one of the more prolific contributors to the veteran suicide conversation in that time period, especially when it was the only, and I was arguing it's still the only podcast that's specifically designated to talk about veteran suicide and meant to be a platform for sharing those stories. There may be something new, but at least as of 2014, 2015, it was the only one around.
Yeah, and it's hard to be, sometimes depending on the what you're actually trying to do with your business, being the first to market can be good. Sometimes it can work against you because nobody is following that particular area, in depth.
Well,
so
what I really benefited from was I was first to market on using an audio platform like a podcast to routinely tell these stories. Where I wasn't first to market was the conversation of veteran suicide, right? In 2014, I would say we were like the whole nation was astutely aware of the problem of veteran suicide. Not that they aren't now, but I think that if you were to look at a graph showing public awareness of that problem, I think that the veteran community pushed it hard in 2014 and 2015, and just by coincidence, that's when I happened to get the subject matter people were familiar with, and so I think so long as they trusted that, and I had a track record that showed that I could do this, that with that platform. And so I think that trust built in. And so since I was the first one to want to do a podcast, I think that helped. I got a lot of that initial attention and initial money that people just wanted to thrust into me to support it. But they were familiar enough with the subject that they knew that it was worth it.
Yeah, definitely. So what would you say is your next major milestone in relation to Lawson Entertainment?
I think, and this is, what I really need to do, and this may be a backdoor way to answering your question, but I'll get there. One thing I really need to do is, now that I have the full-time job and the business, I'm not just grabbing all the low-hanging fruits and I'm not taking any opportunity to get income. Knowing where to, quote-unquote, kill my babies. And the One Too Many Veteran Suicide podcast is a great example of that. I haven't published an episode for that in probably almost a year now. But I still think of it as a product that I need to put time into. And so even though I'm not, it's still taking up brain space, right? I'm still thinking about what's the next thing. Should I do something? Should I write a book? Should I continue to podcast? Should I start doing videos? And then if I do any of those, when do I finally throw the axe down and say, I'm done? Mm-hmm. And I've done as much with this product as I can, and I'm moving on to the next one. And I think a huge milestone would be getting to that point to where I hit a point where what I've done is in the past, and now I'm doing what is going to make me money in the future. And I don't want to, and that's not to say that I look at veteran suicide as a way of making money, but as anybody who runs any sort of business knows, to put out a product, you need to have money to back it. I had a stack of Terminal Lance White Donkey books that I was selling. I was selling like one or two a month just to sort of help keep and the Libsyn feed will never die. 50 years from now, I'll make sure that Libsyn feed is still alive because the content is really valuable and it's, exactly. It needs to be out there. But to better answer your question, I think when I have a reputation that's multimedia, I definitely have a good reputation with podcasting. I'm starting to build my reputation with video. And I would like to get to a point where, like I said, even if it's only $20 a video, getting some sort of ad revenue money off of YouTube or something for some of the videos I'm doing for the sports or maybe even for veteran stuff. But, I want to be able to I want to be able to get to a point where I feel confident in both. Because what ends up happening is you approach a topic, and if you're a podcaster, you think of how can I podcast about that. And a lot of times you can't, right? Like people are like, oh, I want to do a podcast. What's it about? Ants. Great. Can you do 10 episodes about ants? Yeah, I think so. Great. That's 2.5 months. That's not a long time. Like, what are you going to do at month 5? What are how are you going to leverage that to episode 40? Like, I think if you're going to launch a podcast, it needs to at least be a year long. Or you need to go into it thinking I'm only doing 20 episodes, and you like pour your heart and soul to make sure it's the most complete 20 episodes ever. And so I want to get to a point. I'm starting to get to a point, but I'll definitely hit that benchmark where any topic I come across, I can be like, you know what, that's a book, or you know what, that's a video series, that's a feature video, that's a podcast, that's a series of podcasts, and not only in a way that like, hey, I can leverage that to monetize it, but also in a way of like, you know what, that's a good subject, I want to contribute to that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, that's great. That's great. That's visionary, path that you could go on in different ways with different products. So That definitely gives you a focus to be working towards. All right, so this has been an amazing conversation, Tim, and as we are running out of time, I'd like to give you an opportunity to let our listeners know how they can get in contact with you or learn more about your business.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Tim Lawson 21. If you go into iTunes and search This Week at VA, Fuel for Warriors, one too many veteran suicide, that's 1, 2, many veteran suicide. You can listen to the podcast that I'm currently doing. Of course, follow your spirit if you are a women's soccer fan. But right now, it's the best way to. I'm on Twitter. You can follow me there. Otherwise, I'm not really taking a lot of inquiries. So follow me there and tweet at me if you want to get at me for something. Otherwise, I would just really appreciate a listen and review for the podcasts.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you for being on the show, and most importantly, thank you for your service to our country.
Absolutely, it was my pleasure.
Remember, loyal listeners, we are the home of the free because of the brave.
Thank you for tuning in to Charlie Mike Podcast with Dwayne Perro. Our objective is to bring successful veteranpreneurs to help inspire and provide insight into what helped them become successful, with the hopes you can take away various strategies you can implement in your entrepreneurial journey. Visit us on iTunes, leave us a rating and review, and let us know what you thought of the show. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Hoorah!